Hello, everyone. This episode is going to be different. The reason is our country witnessed a tragic event last week. The murder of Charlie Kirk has really deeply impacted many of us. One reason is because it reminds us of the very principles which America was built on. In the Bill of Rights, our founding fathers laid out our God-given liberties they believed are essential for free people. Among the most vital was the freedom to speak, to gather, and to exchange ideas without fear of censorship or punishment. They knew that open debate was not a threat to our nation, but its strength. Our rights are not just words on a piece of paper. They are the foundation of our republic, and they come with the responsibility of passing them on to each new generation, so that they are aware of their rights and the civic duty that comes with them. For this episode, we want to hear from young voices who are involved and are working on making this country not only better for their generation, but the ones behind them as well.
I became involved in politics whenever I was quite young. My dad is a pressure washer, and I saw lots of different regulations going around, and I heard all kinds of conversations happening here and there throughout my family. And over time, I started to find out that there is a way to fix this. Your voice matters. And after a while, I started seeing videos of certain leaders and commentators, and I thought to myself, wow, their voice is so bold.
When I was in high school, I had to write a letter to my state representative about an issue important to me and didn't expect much to come of it, but I figured, you know what, I might as well just write a letter and see what happens. It started as a fight for my dad and became a fight for all first responders, and I was hoping that I would just be able to maybe inspire someone in a position of a lot more power and authority to pick up the problem and maybe do something about it. But I got the opportunity to really work with my state representative at the time on some legislation, and what started as a civics homework project later became a law and was signed into effect before I graduated high school. So through that experience, when I realized, wow, like a homeschooled high schooler with zero political background can get a law passed, like not only was I that much more dedicated to continuing to fight for people, and that kind of birthed within me, I think, a desire to dedicate my life to public service and fighting for people and showing other people how to really make a difference politically. But it really showed me like anyone can effectuate and drive change in their community, especially if they're equipped or given the tools they need to be able to do that.
I got involved with an organization called Young Americans for Liberty. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I'm a Democrat. I don't think I'm a Republican. I don't think I'm even like this like large L libertarian per se. I just remember thinking to myself that, liberty, the idea of liberty and the concept that kind of created our constitutional government was where I was at. And Young Americans for Liberty did a really good job in really just pulling me into what they had going on and talking about those types of things. We had a good college club at that point, and then we actually got connected with the college Republicans at that time, especially as the presidential stuff was kicking up. They were also very aligned on those topics, and then TPUSA was actually up and coming at that time as well. And I got really connected with those guys that were building out the Iowa chapter back in 2015, 2016. And unfortunately, and maybe fortunate, I don't know, whoever knows, I decided not to go back to college after that summer, just because I realized that the thing I had passion for was really just making a change and demonstrating to the people that I grew up around that, this government's not this corrupt thing that they believe it to be. While sure, it's certainly probably a factor here and there, you can make a difference. Complacency or even just ignoring the problem doesn't solve the problem.
I was homeschooled, so I think I probably found myself in that funnel to conservatism very quickly. I grew up reading the founding principles and things like the Federalist Papers. And honestly, my first freshman year of college was such a shock to realize that not all professors, believe in the Constitution or want to, educate students on these founding principles that make our country so great. My freshman year of college, I had a professor who was just as left-wing progressive socialist as you can get. And I wrote a paper defending capitalism and got an F because I didn't argue whatever point she was trying, wanted me to make. And it was eye-opening for me, one, to see that I had to take a consequence by standing up for something that I believed in that affected my GPA and affected, my just even my experience at college. But it also lit a fire in me, and realizing that there were other young people in my classroom who felt the same way that I did, and maybe didn't feel like they could have a voice or stand up to these ideologies that have really infected our college campuses. So a couple of years later, I wound up actually starting a Turning Point chapter. I got involved with grassroots organizations on campus. Even a few years after college, wound up getting involved with AFP in Texas. And, I think my funnel to grassroots activism was just kind of fueled by, having to stand up for the things that I believed in, and realizing that we have such a battle going on right now for our country, and for, fighting for these principles that are so important to, what makes this country great and free.
Freedom of expression or freedom of speech is important to me because, it's one of those values and those equal, unalienable human rights that we all have access to that's laid out in our Constitution. And I think it's both a disservice to our founding fathers that took so much time and effort to write that out and lay the framework for what our democracy would later be built upon. But I think it's also a disservice to future generations in this country for us to not live in a way that upholds and really embodies those freedoms. So we all have an equal right to freedom of speech, press, and religion. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to live in a way that reflects that.
If we don't have freedom of speech, we lose all of our other rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. It is one of the most basic freedoms that our founders saw as essential to preserve liberty and be able to hold government accountable. It's also how we as society, we search for truth in the marketplace of ideas, by having that dialogue with people who maybe we disagree with or don't see eye to eye on. We can sharpen our ideas even when it might be uncomfortable.
One thing that I've always noticed whenever I was growing up is just to be able to have that freedom of, you can talk to your brothers and your sisters and your family members without the fear of being removed or the fear of being disregarded in any way, especially for your opinion.
In my political science classes that I was taking, there were a lot of ideas being thrown out there, but I realized really quickly that there were certain ideas that were shunned or really just looked down on. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, those ideas kind of sound pretty reasonable to somebody like me. And so it made me more and more curious, especially as, when I was going to college. It was during the presidential caucuses when we had an open, primary on both sides. And Iowa was the first to kind of make a decision back in 2015, 2016. And so what I really loved is just being able to hear from both sides. And I really, gained a lot of knowledge, insight, but also perspective on the fact that not everybody appreciates when their opponent gets to talk out loud, basically.
Whenever debates happen and conversations happen with possibly two disagreements coming together, there have been many in my life that I've been able to witness firsthand of iron sharpening iron. And I've had many conversations with good friends and even my current fiance now of learning how to convey your message and do it wisely, and also being open-minded to receiving another perspective, because iron will continue to sharp iron, and I'm learning that every single day.
The outcome is so much different when both sides are able to come and present their points and not lose sight of the person behind the argument. And I think that that's something that we often struggle with just as a collective whole. So I think it's a goal of mine just moving forward, regardless of whether or not someone else has a different opinion than me on an issue, is to really see okay, why do you believe that? Tell me more about it. Because I coming from a standpoint of wanting to understand where the other person's coming at, and then being able to have that reciprocated and just not losing sight of individuals' dignity amidst that debate, I think is really important. And I think it's through that at the end of the day, whether you win someone over or they win you over or you both stay on either side. I think when we're able to have that like civil discourse and challenge one another and exchange ideas, it opens us up to consider alternative perspectives, which I think cumulatively is better for all of us. But I think it really goes back to freedom of speech, and that's what it's all about. And I think being able to live that out, the perfect example of that is by engaging with others through debate, respectful debate.
It doesn't matter how you debate or anything like that, as long as you've got principles to back the ideas that you're fighting for. Usually your foundation is pretty firm, where I would watch somebody like a Charlie Kirk or a Ben Shapiro basically just dismantle arguments as people just couldn't argue against the principle. They tried to argue the topic instead. And so that was really inspiring. So watching them do their campus speeches and talk to college students who had the same, honestly, at that time, I had the same exact questions that they had, and they would bring that to them, and, they would answer the questions with such, just such a great founding, a lot of good principles. So they answered it so well that I was like, it's hard to argue against that. I wasn't necessarily sold, but I couldn't argue against it. So that sent me on a rabbit trail of like, all right, this is the topic they just covered. Now I'm going to go watch other people talk about this topic. And then from there, I would learn way more about these issues than I ever even looked at it, which was just a surface level.
I think over the last couple of weeks, I've seen some great debates by Charlie. It's been inspiring to me to want to approach things the same way. I know I haven't always done it myself, but I think that's the beauty of freedom of speech. It allows for growth and persuasion and the ability to engage with others.
I think Ronald Reagan said it best, like freedom is only one generation away from extinction. I think it's upon us to ensure that those freedoms in a country that was established on the freedoms laid out in our Constitution still exists and is around for the next generation. And the only way for us to be able to do that is if we're able to come together and remember, at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all Americans. We all have access to the same constitutional liberties, and your ability to have a different opinion than someone else is still protected under the same Constitution. And I think when any one of those liberties is called into question, then the entirety of the thing itself is then threatened. So I think it's important for all of us and for the future of America for us to be able to find some common ground, regardless of how small that is, and move forward together for the sake of our shared freedoms.
I think a lot of people's eyes have been opened just to see that someone who, whether you agreed with him or not on the issues, Charlie was strong in those convictions. And, I think to be killed for something that you believe in is not what this country is about. And it's not what we were founded on. And if we lose the right to be able to have that free speech and dialogue, it leads to violence. And I've seen, especially on social media over the last few weeks, that people's eyes are being opened to realize, hey, like that guy kind of thought very similarly to the way that I did, or, maybe I have more moderate beliefs and I could be killed for those things too. And I think the other thing that people are recognizing is that I think they see themselves in a person like Charlie, who gave a voice to people who may not have had the courage to speak up. And I think people now feel like they have to have courage to speak up, or else they will be silenced, or else it might lead to violence. And I think that we are seeing a huge awakening in this country of people who realize that, they have to be able to take a stand, or else, as Ronald Reagan once said, we're the last bastion of freedom. And if we lose that, there is no other America for us to go to.
What I've seen is a lot of not even just conservatives, but everyday individuals who probably pay attention to politics, but never talk about it, never show up to events or even try to do anything related to politics in their everyday life, show up to vigils for Charlie Kirk. I've seen people that again, same factors, decide to start posting about it and start that conversation. I've seen recently, I don't know what the number is, but like a huge demand to start TPUSA chapters across the country. So instead of being discouraged, I've seen our side of things definitely feel motivated and empowered to go out there and do something about it, realizing that, this isn't going to happen on its own. While it was probably comfortable for a lot of people that Charlie Kirk was doing what he was doing at such a high level, it takes more than just Charlie Kirk. And this is the moment that we can all pick up the microphone that he, unfortunately had to put down and go do something about it in our way of doing things about it, which is going and engaging in open dialogue and encouraging others to do the same.
The biggest encouragement I would give to anybody right now is just disagree better. You don't have to hate somebody for their opinion. And I've just seen all kinds of crazy debates and comment sections of families getting separated with opinions and friendships, quite frankly, breaking up. I would just say, stay strong in your beliefs, but be open-minded and be kind. And that is one thing that Charlie taught me is be kind and let others debate you. If we ever get to the point where you do not have the ability to express your opinion, no matter what it is, then really, who are we at this point? So be bold, believe in yourself to go out and talk with people, but also be kind and listen. And don't ever let hatred overfill your soul for a particular policy or a viewpoint, because we are all human.
I do think it's important to not feel like I'm just an individual. What can I do? Charlie was just an individual. And look at the movement that he started. Even before his death, he was able to start a grassroots movement that expanded to tens of thousands of chapters across college campuses. And I want people to realize that they too can be that one person who can start a movement. And I also believe that right now we are in a place and time where God is calling people for such a time as this to be bold in their convictions, to fight for our country, and to stand for the things that they believe in.
Well, I know I was inspired by hearing from so many young people who are really working to make a difference in their country. And that was really Charlie Kirk's life work. Somebody may not know this, but I actually knew Charlie when he was coming out of high school. He was going around the Illinois suburbs, was just starting Turning Point USA, and we would show up at Tea Party meetings and speak, and he really captured the imagination of so many of the activists there, and then certainly of young people. And so his legacy of fighting against big government policies and fighting for liberty, and to really mobilize grassroots, especially young people, to pursue more freedom is a great legacy, and one that we hope to continue to carry on as American Potential.